Architectural Outcast.
Welcome to the Architectural Outcast, that little old channel from Texas. I'm on record expressing my frustrations with how George R.R. Martin deals with morality. Link in the description below. Morals and ethics aren't a weakness. They're not a handicap that ties your hands, puts you at a disadvantage when dealing with the unethical and immoral. Sources as disparate as the Bible and Machiavelli all warn, don't mess with the righteous. It's way too dangerous. I want to ask y'all a question. What do you all think would happen if you crossed the bottom line of a moral and ethical person, pushed them into a corner, make them come to the conclusion that they are morally and ethically obligated to destroy you? I have a friend. Well, technically he's the husband of my wife's friend, but he's a friend. He works for a company out of Korea. They import corn, wheat, pork, and beef from America. They specialize in pasture-raised, organic, no antibiotics, no GMOs, that type of thing. His job was to visit small towns all across America looking for produce that fit his requirements. He came to me for advice because he was struggling. The reason why he'd gotten the job is because he'd been born and raised in the United States, if you want to call Southern California the United States. Gone to university in Illinois. His English is actually better than mine. He's a friendly, outgoing, likable guy. But he was struggling to understand small-town America. He was starting to lose sales, and he didn't know the reason why. But he was smart enough to think that maybe there was a culture clash going on, miscommunication. Knowing I'd grown up in a small town, he came to me for some advice. This isn't the first time I've had to explain small town culture to somebody. So I told him, I got you covered, buddy. And I gave him 3 things to look at. The first thing I gave my friend was a quote from D.H. Lawrence. You probably know him as the English author who wrote Lady Chatterley's Lover. After living in America for a while, in 1923, he wrote that the quintessential American soul is hard, isolate, stoic, and a killer. It is never yet melted. I'll let you all chew on that one for a bit. The second thing I gave my friend was this book, Walter Russell Mead's Special Providence. It is the best scholarly description of traditional American morals and ethics that I've ever found. After he finished the book, I told him, go watch Tombstone. That film is a quintessential representation of traditional American morals and ethics. Wyatt Earp has retired from law enforcement. Along with his brothers Morgan and Virgil and their wives, they're headed to Tombstone to seek their fortune. The brothers get a job dealing cards in one of the local saloons, and it's not long before they're raking in the cash. As the Earps are setting up shop, in rides Wyatt's old friend Doc Holliday, gambler, gunfighter, chronic tuberculosis sufferer, and his main squeeze, Kate. It's not long before the Earps and Holliday come into conflict with the local crime syndicate, the Cowboys. Curly Bill, one of the leaders of the Cowboys, kills the city marshal in an intoxicated stupor. The Earps and Holliday stand off the Cowboys, drag off Curly Bill to jail. Out of a sense of duty, Virgil becomes the new city marshal, and Morgan is his deputy. Wyatt isn't very happy about the situation. He wants to remain retired. He doesn't want any conflicts, but he agrees to back up his brothers. Tombstone has passed a new city ordinance. No wearing of firearms in town. A group of cowboys ride through, flaunting their guns. The Earps and Doc head over to the OK Corral to arrest the miscreants. We have the famous shootout. Most of the cowboys are killed. In retaliation, the cowboys ambush and wound Virgil. While Virgil is being operated on, somebody sticks a shotgun through the window of the saloon and shoots Morgan in the back while he's playing pool. Morgan dies in Wyatt's arms. The Earps and Holliday leave Tombstone, apparently demoralized. The cowboys follow them to the train station to finish the Earps off once and for all. It's a setup. And that's where you get the famous line from Wyatt Earp, "Tell 'em I'm coming and hell's coming with me." Wyatt, Doc, and friends go on the death ride, systematically hunting down every cowboy they can find, culminating in the final gunfight between Doc and the mysterious gunman Ringo. Throw in the little romance between Wyatt and an actress, and you have all your bases covered. Great movie. So many quotable lines. It's usually at this point that somebody will stand up and say, "It didn't happen that way. The movie's not accurate." The movie doesn't claim to be accurate. There are two Wests, the historic West and the mythical West. Tombstone is part of the mythical West. Remember the question I asked earlier? What would happen if you push a moral person too far? Why do the Earps and Holliday's story still resonate 140 years later? Family, loyalty, and the willingness to stand up for what you believe in, regardless of the cost. When I saw Tombstone for the first time, when it came out in theaters, my favorite scene was at the train station, when Wyatt Earp shouts, "Tell 'em I'm coming, and hell's coming with me. Hell's coming with me." It's so visceral, so full of rage. You have a sense of a dangerous man pushed too far. Bad things are about to happen. As I've gotten older and experienced life more, there's another scene that I've come to appreciate. The one that gives the train yard scene its visceral power. That's when Morgan dies in Wyatt's arms. Wyatt, covered in Morgan's blood, wanders out into the rain, and you see the grief, loss, pain, guilt, all slowly turn to rage. I knew a professor who would proudly brag to anybody who would listen that she was the gatekeeper. She kept the wrong type of people out of architecture. Not the language I would use, but whatever works for you. At the top of the list of her wrong type of people, attractive Asian women. And if that woman happened to be more talented than she was, definitely the wrong type of people. I have a friend who is a very attractive Chinese lady. Unfortunately, she had to take this professor's studio. As the semester progressed, the professor started making more and more outrageous demands of this lady's work. I have no problem telling you all, I'm good at what I do. My friend, she's even better. She's crazy talented. Not only was she able to do every outrageous demand, she aced them. Her final project was amazing. The professor failed her anyhow. My friend had been put through a semester of living hell. Being failed in such an unjust manner was the last straw. She had a complete psychological and emotional breakdown. I was trying to physically hold her up as she collapsed into a blubbering, sobbing, incoherent mess. I ended up having to carry her several blocks to Student Health Services because I was afraid what she might do to herself. As I walked to Student Services, every time I looked down at my friend, I was overwhelmed by a feeling of complete helplessness. Her mind wasn't even there, so I couldn't talk to her, much less do anything to help her. I was completely out of my depth. And on top of that, I was starting to be racked with guilt. Was I somehow partially responsible for this? Should I have done more? Could I have done more to prevent this? And at the same time, there's a slow burning rage starting to build. When I arrived at the medical facilities and explained what was going on, they thanked me, told me she was going to be okay, and then whisked her off for treatment. I was left alone. I didn't know what to do with myself, standing there all confused. And at this point, I'm at a low boil. And then suddenly, I had a name and a face that had had a smug, self-satisfied smile when she saw me carrying my blubbering friend out of the room. Seeing as how I was in training to become a professor, I took umbrage with what this particular professor was doing. A teacher's job is to guide, nurture, mentor, to help the student become the best they can be. Because of her hate and insecurities, she was abusing her position of power and authority to actively harm students, prevent them from becoming the best they could be. She was completely immoral and unethical, without honor. I'm no longer out of my depth. No more feelings of helplessness. I know exactly what to do. I'm your Huckleberry. Under the circumstances, I felt like I only had two options. If I wanted to keep my self-worth and self-identity, I needed to seek redress for the injustice that occurred to my friend. Otherwise, if I did nothing, allowed it to stand, I would be just as immoral and unethical, without honor, as that professor. I'm not going to go into all the ins and outs of what happened, but you know one of the best ways to defeat evil? Bring it out into the daylight. Let the world know what evil's doing. When it was all said and done, the only reason why that professor wasn't fired for what she did, my friend was a lot kinder and more forgiving than I'll ever be. Maybe my friend is a better human being than I am. After the fact, my friend and I have talked about that incident once. Being from another culture, she struggled to understand why I did what I did. And so she asked me, "You're not my family. You're not even my boyfriend." Why? Because you're my friend. And seeing how she was still struggling to understand, I told her the quote from D.H. Lawrence. I gave her the book to read, and then I sent her off to watch Tombstone. Every time I see that scene of Wyatt standing out in the rain, covered in his dead brother's blood, I feel like I'm beginning to get around the edges of understanding what he was going through. The pain, the loss, the suffering, the guilt. And at the train station, the rage, and the sense that he was obligated to stand up, to do something, to stop the cowboys no matter the cost. Morality is a shield and weapon. At any rate, I hope I've given you all something to think about, and until next time, y'all be safe. If you're still here, I really appreciate it. While you're at it, why don't you give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell. You can hear me yammer on about something else next time.
Please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment.